Okay.
Ready?
Mm.
Okay. Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. So, Masha Allah will start from 1661. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. You guys can hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear
Oh,
you.
1661. If God punished the people for their transgression, he would have annihilated every creature on earth. But he respites them for a specific predetermined time. Once their interim ends, they cannot delay it by 1 hour nor advance it. 62. They ascribe to God what they dislike for themselves, then utter the lie with their own tongues that they are righteous. Without any doubt, they have incurred hell, for they have rebelled. By God, we have sent messengers to community before you, but the devil adorned their works in their eyes. Consequently, he is their Lord, and they have incurred a painful retribution. We have revealed this scripture to you to point out for them what they have what they dispute, and to provide guidance and mercy for people who believe. And God says, the subtitles additional proofs from God. 65. God sends down from the sky water to revive the land after it has died. This should be sufficient proof for people who hear. 66. And in the livestock, there is a lesson for you. We provide you with a drink from their bellies, from the midas of digested food and blood. You get pure milk, delicious for the drinkers. And from the fruits of date, palm, and grapes, you produce intoxins as well as good provisions. This should, I'm sorry, I kind of, sorry, the page I'm using app and it just flip over. Sorry. Okay, 67. And from the fruits of date palms and grapes, you produce intoxins as well as good provisions. This should be sufficient proof for people who understand. And the headline is the bee. And your Lord inspired the bee, build homes in mountains and trees, and the hives they built for you. Then eat from all the fruits from following the digestion of your Lord precisely. From their bellies comes a drink of different colors, wherein there is healing for people. This should be sufficient proof for people who reflect. God created you, then He terminates your life. He lets some of you live to the oldest age, only to find out that there is a limit to the knowledge they can acquire. God is omniscient, omnipotent. No partners with God. God has provided for some of you more than others. Those who are given plenty would never give their properties to their subordinates to the extent of making them partners. Would they give up God's blessings? And God made for you spouses from among yourselves and produced for you from your spouses children and grandchildren and provide you with good provisions. Should they believe in falsehood and turn unappreciative of God's blessings? Idol worship, not very intelligent. Yet they worship beside God what possesses no provisions for them in the heaven nor on earth, nor can they them with anything. Therefore, do not cite the examples for God. God knows while you do not know. Then the subheading is the rich believer is better than the poor believer. God cites the example of a slave who is owned and is totally powerless compared to the one whom we blessed with good provisions from which he gives to charity secretly and publicly. Are they equal? Praise be to God, most of them do not know. And God cites the example of two men. One is dumb, lacks the ability to do anything, is totally dependent on his master. Whichever way he directs him, he cannot produce anything good. Is he equal to the one who rules with justice and is guided in the right path? This life is very short. To God belongs the future of heavens and the earth. As far as he is concerned, the end of the world, the hour is a blink of an eye away, or even closer. God is omnipotent. God brought you out of your mother's bellies, knowing nothing, and he gave you the hearing, the eyesight, and the brains, that you may be appreciative. Do not see the birds Do they not see the birds committed to fly in the atmosphere of the sky? None holds them up in the air except God. This should be sufficient proof for people who believe. And God provided for you stationary homes where you can live. And he provided for you portable homes made of hide of livestock so you can use them when you travel and when you settle down, and from their wools, furs, and hairs, and here you make furnishing and luxury for a while. And God provides for you shade through things which He created and provided for you, shelters in the mountains, and provide for you garments that protect you from heat and garments that protect you when you fight in wars. He does perfect His blessings upon you that you may submit. If they turn away, I'm sorry, if they still turn away, then your sole mission is the clear delivery of the message. The disbelievers unappreciative. The, they fully recognize God's blessing, then deny them. The majority of them are disbelievers. On the day of resurrection, the day will come when we rise from every community a witness. Then those who disbelieve will not be permitted to speak, nor will they be excused. Once those who transgress see the retribution, it will be too late. It will not be commuted for them, nor will they be respited. So inshallah, I'll stop here at 1685. And so let's go ahead and talk about the verses, inshallah. So 1661, that's God's talking about the original sin. As we know that our original sin was, when we sided with Satan up in heavens, and that was this that mistake. As we know that there's no idol worship in God's kingdom. God has, as we know that the angels and beyond that, we don't even know how many other creations God have. And as we learn that idol worship is not allowed, and God knows our innermost thoughts. If anybody have a slight idea of idol worship, God will expose them, as God exposed Satan when he had the negative idea that he can do something on his own. So God exposed him. So this thing, we should need to know that, deep in our heart, that whatever we think, we cannot fool God. As we think that, oh, if I think I can do that, maybe God doesn't know. God knows our innermost thoughts. So when the original sin happened and we were exposed, and it was the blessing of God that God has given us another chance, so that we can, clear that mistake and learn and go back to God's kingdom. If we still have those negative thoughts that I can do something, as we learn that the simple example of idol worship is believing that you can do something or someone else can benefit you, because we read in the Surah Fatih that Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. If you even think somebody can help you, you have sort of crossed that line into idol worship. And we see that even the submitters, by mistakenly, we do make mistakes on the daily basis. We sometimes depend on someone and we don't realize. We should continue to repent to God on a daily basis, that, God, if anywhere I made a mistake, please forgive me. And in this verse, God is very clear. God says, if God punishes for the people for their transgression, He would have annihilated every creature. Here, God is talking about the people, and then God is using the word every creature. God will just completely wipe out this whole earth. There's no point. The whole point of the coming to this earth is to clarify or cleanse our soul and just depend on God 100% and submit to God alone 100%. That's the whole purpose. And we do make mistakes. I mean, otherwise God would have just wiped off everything. There's no purpose for creating. And many places we learn, God says there's a specific purpose we created this earth, as so that we can learn. And everyone is, as we understand, God says, but He respites them for a specific predetermined time. Once the interim ends, they cannot delay it by 1 hour. So everybody get a fair chance. We cannot say that, somebody born in certain religion, it was never exposed to, like, when Pharaoh asks Moses, what about the generations before me? And what Moses says that the knowledge is with my Lord, and that my Lord is never wrong. So God, He's extreme just, a symbol of justice, that, that we cannot question God's justice. And in these verses, we learn that God gives everybody fair chance to prove themselves that who is your Lord. Everybody get a fair chance. Even Pharaoh got a perfect chance. And once your time is up, there's no going back. The other day my son was asking me, that if God knows who is going to hell and who's going to heaven, then why God created this earth? He already knows. You can just put people in and say, okay, let's backtrack to the step. Okay, let's say God knows and He doesn't need to create any earth to show us our innermost thoughts. And then let's see 100 people created and 50 of them going to hell. God knows they're going to hell and 50 are going to heaven. Those going to hell would then complain, God, why did you put us in hell? Because they will not take God's judgment in that way. This is God's mercy that God shows us, gives us chance to show, So, and we learn in the Quran that on the day of resurrection, nobody is complaining about their report card. People are saying that, mutual blaming, they're complaining, this one person led me, this person led me. They understand what they did. Nobody's saying that, I didn't do, I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. They know that what they deserve. In fact, they're going to be saying that, God, please send me back. Let me reprove to you, so I can be better. So when I told him, if God will put, then this will be a problem. I say, okay, I understand that, there's a reason God has created this earth for us to learn. So God can, if you read Surah 3, verse 154, God said, God does puts you to the test to bring out your true convictions and to test what is in your hearts. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. So whenever we go through a test in life, there could be something, you say, I love God the most. God may put you to test to show you, then realize that, oh my God, I was wrong. And these tests are to, like when you're in college, before the final, you test yourself where I am. You say, I am ready, and then you take a quiz and see how ready you are. So these are little quizzes that God gives us when you proclaim that I only worship God. God may put you to test to show you, because God already knows where we are, is to show us where we stand. So, and this is another blessing from God, that so we can improve our weaknesses. God shows us our weaknesses. And for the predetermined time that we have given us, this is all the time we got. And we don't know when our time is up. We don't even know that if we're going to live the next day or even next hour or even minute. There could be so many excuses. There was a TV show that says there's 1,000 ways to die. Every second, every day we live is a miracle. So we should not take this life as a granted. I'll do it tomorrow. We should ponder upon our life, whatever my true convictions are. Am I right? Where am I lacking somewhere? Let's go to the verse 62. I'll show you a funny joke. There's a TV show I was watching, and then there was a couple relaxing in the evening, and they were having a cup of tea, and they were like saying, I love you, I love you. They were just talking, and all of a sudden the door opens, and there's somebody comes in with a mask and have like a gun in his hand, and he said, so the husband and wife, before they were talking, I love you, I'll die for you, I can take a bullet for you, and now they're hiding behind each other, scared and fear for their life. And so once they were, after a few minutes, he'd take off his mask. He's a neighbor's kid, had a little toy gun. And he said, I was just, pranking with you. So once he leaves, now the husband, wife looking, and now the true conviction comes out. We proclaim something, and then, but what are our innermost thoughts? And God knows our innermost thoughts. We cannot hide anything from them. Verse 62, God says, they ascribe to God what they dislike for themselves, then utter the lie with their own tongues that they are righteous. And God says, without doubt, they have incurred hell, for they rebel. We ascribe to God. It's, I sort of get two meanings out of it. Like it's like a charity. You giving a charity that what you don't like. That's one thing, and that one kind of fits with the verse 392. You cannot attain righteousness until you give to charity from the possessions you love. Whatever you give to charity, God is fully aware thereof. So if you compare these two verses, righteousness is attained by giving what you like, what you love. And in this verse, they ascribe to God what they dislike for themselves. So suppose I have like it's a clothes that I don't wear, or something. I bought a shoe I don't like. I say I'm gonna give it to a charity. I don't like this shoe, and then you think that and then the same word is used, righteous, and 392 is righteousness. So it's very clear that you cannot attain righteousness. God says you cannot. This is a statement made by God. You cannot attain until you give. And as one of your constituencies, I've seen that you said the money is one of the things that people love. Everybody do things for money. So that's one of the easiest way to to give money. It's hard to give clothes or something that you love. It's already used, but money would be something. But righteousness attained by giving to charity and money. And God says, and they say that they utter lies by their own tongues, that they are righteous. They give what they don't like, but they claim that they are righteous. And God knows our innermost heart. God said, without any doubt, they have incurred hell, for they have rebelled. So this is very, very serious. Whenever we give charity, we need to make sure what we're giving, not something that is useless that I was not going to use, and then expect to become, okay, oh, I have done some work for this and that, So 90, sorry, 63. One of the meaning I was also getting ascribed is, in the dictionary was that ascribe is when you have something negative happens, then you say there. I was looking at the ascribed definition in the online. It says that it gives you like example, like a sentence like Jane's short temper to her stomach, upset stomach, because Jane is upset. So you're saying that my upset stomach is caused by my temper is caused by because I have a stomach ache. So because you taking a negative thing that's happening to you, ascribe to someone. And I have seen many people ascribe to God that if something bad happens to you, oh God, why did you do this to me? Or what? That's one of the meaning that comes to me, that when they ascribe to God, what they don't like. I'm sorry. So anyway, next verse 63. By God, we have sent messengers to the community before you, but the evil adorn their works in their eyes. Consequently, he is now their Lord, and they have incurred a painful retribution. So by God, it's like God is swearing. These verses kind of gives chills by my bones that, that God is swearing. Uh, God does not have to swear. When God says a statement, that is it. Many places we read God is swearing by the mountains, the sky, the galaxies, some fruits by the fig and all that. Imagine that if there's somebody who's very, very honest, that person by heart, that this person never lies. Whatever he says, he's an honest, truthful person. And one day you find him swearing, you would like get up from the seat. You say, my God, he swear? That means this must be serious. Wherever God swears, it's like, God does not have to swear. And when God swears, it's really, really, we have to pay more attention when God swears, and those who disbelieve and they take, God says that the devil doing the worst constantly, he's their Lord. When, you know, imagine that, your Lord is not the Lord of the heaven and earth. Your Lord is the devil. Imagine that, how worse that could be. And then God is swearing by that. This is on the top of a statement that made by God. There's no doubt in it, but on the top of that, God is swearing, by God, by Himself. He's saying, that's really serious to me. And then 26, Surah 26, verse number 3, where God's, this is this verse when it says, we have sent messengers to community before you. So God is making the life easy for the messenger also at the same time. That God is telling over in the Quran that this been the system. Messengers comes and people will deny them. They will follow their idols. So God is making the life easy for, if you read the surah number 26, verse number 3, it says, you may blame yourself that they are not believers. If we will, we can ascend from sky a sign that forces their necks to bow. So God is already telling the messenger, don't worry. Like if you're an insurance salesman, you go out, you're going to sell insurance, and the boss tells you, expect if you talk to 100 people, maybe one or two going to buy insurance policy. It's already telling them so they don't become depressed or something. This has been the system. Every time messengers come, they've been denied with overwhelming people. And this happens with us too. When you talk to people, so don't take it personally. It's not you. They're rejecting God's message. So you don't take it upon self. We are just take it as a servant of God. Then your job is to just show them the policy, and this is what it is. They want to buy it or not. Don't take it, upon yourself. And this also helps with our emotions and our temper. So we don't get, freak out. In the beginning, when I became submitter, when I was so excited when I would tell people, and when they bluntly tell me, bad words, I used to get very offended and very sad and upset, But now, Masha Allah, God's blessing, you just tell them, they hear, this is what it is, and try to convince people in the best possible manner. And it is, if they don't, then, it's not your religion, it's God's religion. Verse 64. We have revealed this scripture to you to point out for them what they dispute. So one of the main purpose, one of the purpose of the scripture of this is that because people dispute all the time, and now even before, they have arguments, they have debates, and this Quran clearly points out their disputes. And at the same time, God says, and to provide guidance and mercy for the people who believe. So it's up to you. If you believe in this scripture, that's all that matters. If you believe in this scripture, if you're sincere, all your disputes will be pointed out. This is, like suppose you're having a debate and there's 4 or 5 people debating, and then not everybody's agreeing with each other. This is what God is saying. We have revealed this scripture to you to point out for them what they dispute. And that's going to point out. And if you're a believer, this book will become guidance and mercy for you, for the people who believe. And people and if they're still disputing and fighting and all that, this verse is just pretty much, sets everything, if you don't believe, because if you believe, this become guidance and mercy for you. And if you're still disputing and things like that, then, everybody can, see your own self where I'm standing. Because as the beginning of this Quran study is 61, this is everyone get a fair chance. Nobody can complain. Everybody get the time, what is determined by God, whoever needs how much time. You cannot increase by 1 second or decrease by 1 second. If God sets you, you're going to die 60-year-old. You can be sitting in a plane and it will be crashed. You will come out alive because this is what God says, God will. And we have seen examples of airplane crashes where people have survived, But this is all God's system, and we cannot deny that. 65, God says additional proofs. So God says, and God sent some, I'm going to paraphrase here, water from the sky to revive the dead land. How many times we see here where I live, it's haven't rained for like over a month or 2 months. And we have seen the grass is becoming brown and almost dead. There's cracking in it. And you can see there's nothing alive in it. And all of a sudden there's going to rain, and then it's going to all over the green grass, And what is God is saying, this is proof, this is enough proof for somebody who hear. I'm also trying to see my time. It says 39, and I think we started at 15. So inshallah, I'll try to speed up a little bit to, I guess, 9 o'clock will be 45 minutes. And in this verse, God says the people who hear. Okay, what is hearing? God is not even saying listening. Listening is somebody who's paying attention. Hearing is the process of be able to hear the sound. And God says that they don't even hear, let alone listen, is far down the road. This is enough proof. If you see the rain cycle, this is enough proof for somebody who can hear. And those who don't think about these things, and for them it's not proof because they cannot hear. Have you seen somebody wearing those high quality noise canceling headphones? They cannot hear. You can scream at them, they won't be able to hear. So it seems like they have those headphones where what they're hearing is their idols. So everything is blocked. Whatever you tell them, they cannot hear. And can even go to the next step. And I want you to remember this word here, because it's gonna link with something coming up in the next verses. One thing to mention, have you seen the Pied Piper story? And everybody start following, and you see the crowd, people following. It's just like somebody's making the music, the Pied Piper story, and all the people are following you. You can scream at them, they will not listen to you. They're gonna follow that person, sort of that kind of idea. Verse 66, and God says, livestock, there's a lesson for you. And from their bellies, the milk that comes out. Imagine that those glands, they produce white, pure milk from a red blood. I mean, imagine that. If you take a milk and have you go to the paint shops, and the standard paint is white, and you want to paint brown, they can just add few drops and it will change the color. So if white milk, even a one drop of blood will spoil the milk. But imagine how God's system is so 100% perfect that not a single blood crosses into the milk, and you get a pure white milk. And not only that, God gives you so many other benefits from these. Masha Allah, my last sermon was about livestock, and in that I cover a few things about livestock, that we need to be more and more appreciative of God. That it was one of the part was that evolution. That some people think that God does not exist, and this has happened by itself. If you think about the livestock and humans and the trees, if you compare this triangle, they're completely dependent on each other. I mean, trees maybe not so much, but the agriculture has to go by actual work, and the livestock, we eat the fruits and vegetable when we grow agriculture, and the livestock eat the byproduct, which is the leaves. Imagine if the livestock diet, God could have said that livestock that diet fruits and vegetables too. So we have to make food for them and ourselves. So we eat the fruit and they eat the leaves and all the byproduct, and then they produce milk and meat for us. If we had to produce vegetables for them, imagine how expensive milk and meat would be. It would be very, very expensive. And look at the trees, the leaves, how good submitters they are. They work hard to clean the air for us. At the same time, they're producing from bad, dirty stuff to a clean eating food for us. Imagine that. We take the oxygen and we pollute the air. They take the polluting air and they clean the air for us. At the same time, they produce food for us. Imagine that. I mean, this alone can just completely debunk the story of the evolution. If this, I mean, these are three different systems. Livestock separate, leaves and all that. The vegetation is separate, and human. If the evolution was true, was there a source of communication going between them? Like they're supposed to be communicating with each other. Like, okay, these are humans and they need food. Okay, let's set livestock and their diet will be their byproduct. This system has created by some system. There's a central processing that was controlling all this. I mean, evolution would control one thing at a time, but what about the other system? There's so many other systems. Just alone this, if you ponder, that can solve a lot of clear a lot of things for us. And one quick note, and if you look at the chickens, they are sort of birds. birds in real life, they just have maybe 1 or 2 eggs per season or something, but chicken lays egg on a daily basis, and they are birds family. And if they were the same way as the regular birds, they would lay egg maybe 1 or 2 or 3 a year, and when the babies comes out in the birds, they need routinely care by their parents for like a month or so. But the chicken baby, as soon it comes out, it start running around eating food by on their own. Imagine if these birds were like the birds of the regular birds. Imagine how expensive would be an egg would be, how expensive it would be, and the meat of chicken, it would be like caviar or something. You would be like, oh, I'm gonna have an egg. But there are signs for us. God has created these creatures for us, and we should be more and more appreciative of God's blessings. And then God says in 67, from fruit and date palms, you produce intoxicants. At the same time, at delicious, good provisions. For as we know that from grapes, we make intoxicants like alcohol and all that. At the same time, the grapes is good for your body. It depends how you can take one fruit and move it around and to get something good or bad. Similarly, human being, can be a good person or a bad person from same Adam's family. And then God says, this is a sufficient proof for somebody who understands. So we heard that before the word says here, right? And here God says, this should be sufficient proof who understand. So remember this second word now. And now we continue to the next verse, the bee. And God says that, and your Lord inspired the bee, build homes in mountains and trees, and the hives they built for you. Imagine this bee. We can learn so much from bee. Have you seen the movie The Bee, and where the bees are collecting honey? And one of somebody, like, I just know the somewhat story that one of the bee becomes advocate for the regular bees, that you work so hard for this honey and the human takes it. So he says, from now on, bees gonna keep the honey. And there was so much abundant of honey that the bees stopped working and they were all lazy and doing nothing. So this is the God's perfect system. God created the bee, so they produce so much honey that it's sufficient for them, and there's so much more that we can share with them. And they, how their system that works, they're it's like a small city. One bee finds a flower somewhere, a garden, and then it's going to come back and tell the other bees, and they give exact GPS direction, and they exactly go to the pinpoint location. Imagine that. you know I mean, this is amazing how God's creation, how God creates whatever he likes. I mean, be glorified, the most gracious, the most merciful. And we need to also learn from the bees that one of the subtitle was God likes hardworking people, not lazy people. So we learn from the bee that bee is such a hardworking, they're always active and doing something. We have very limited time on earth, very predetermined time, and we should take every time, every second very wisely, and not to, we should see that, uh, productivity in our life, and the best productivity is, being more and more righteous. That's the ultimate. I mean, you can make trillions of dollars, and then it's just what it's gonna do for you. It's that you see a lot of rich people. Then, I mean, but what happens at the end of their interim? You know, the money cannot help them. You cannot extend, if you're diagnosed with something, a terminal illness. It will not even extend whatever God has predetermined. The money will not help you in any way. I've seen growing up. I mean, nowadays you can see those. As I grew up watching those actors, and now I see many of them have gone. You can just go on YouTube and see side by side before and now. This is what the reality of this world is. No matter, our priority should be, being more and more righteous. That's the only thing is gonna be benefiting us. Verse 70, God says, God has created you, and He terminates your life. So God is created. He's the one going to take your life. He terminates your life. God's telling you, nobody terminates your life. Don't worry about it. You could be walking in the middle of the jungle with the lions and everything. Don't worry about it. I mean, of course we have to take our precautions, but God is telling you flat, He's the one who's going to terminate. So don't worry about it. There's something you cannot control. Don't even worry about it. But one thing that you have some control is your free will to worship God alone. That's something. And we see people every day working hard to survive for something God says you have no control, but something they can change, they totally ignore it. Something they can make their next life in heaven, that is the control that God has given us to worship God alone. But what do you see? People worry about their money. God says in other places that money, their food, everything is already predetermined. And here God says your life is predetermined. So why we worry about all this? Just relax, depend, trust in God. And when you say I trust in God, God may put you through a small test where you bring out your true convictions and learn from that to improve your trust in God. And that's what we're supposed to do, to trust in God. And then let's go to the next verse. God has provided for you. So God says God has provided some more than other. So verse number 71. And who are given plenty would never give their priorities to their subordinates to the extent of making them their partners. We see that all the time. A rich family will, or somebody who's very high status will pass their wealth to their children. They're not going to pass their wealth to their employees or something else. A gigantic company will not give their partners to somebody who worked for them, to the children maybe, but not for. So why would they expect the same thing from God? And we see that people in different religions, not only they bring somebody close to God, they even go beyond God. I mean, you can clearly see, you can talk to somebody, and whatever their idol worship beside God is, if you say anything about their idol worshiper, they will get more offended. You can say, oh my God is something, you see something negative, but they probably won't even get upset on that. They'll leave you alone. But if any minute you say something about their idol worshiper, they will get offended. They'll get mad with you, and you could get into serious trouble in some places in this world. Yeah, but God, no problem. So they not only bring subordinates not too close to God, but they cross it, and that's a horrible, horrible thing. Because some of the messengers. I mean, it's been the case all the time. People have bringing their messengers are gone, and they'll worship them, and they'll make all those kind of things, and that's very sad. 1672. And God says God has created spouses from our among selves, and children and grandchildren, and God has given us provisions. You know, so these all things are coming from God. Should they believe in falsehood and turn unappreciative of God's blessing? So God says that, you know, why would you believe in falsehood then? After all, you see the sign on daily basis, the rain cycle upon cycle proof. There are many, many verses in the Quran God talks about the proofs, and then you say you should believe in falsehood and turn unappreciative of God's blessing. Being appreciative is one of the very, very important thing that in the Quran God is teaching, and we have to be appreciative. The more we thank God, the more God gives us. But if you turn unappreciative, I'm paraphrasing, the retribution is severe. God's retribution. So this, believe in God and on the blessings that God is going, and be thankful every day. I mean, sometimes I read a very beautiful letter online on Facebook, and then somebody wrote, and I'm thankful for, even the person is saying, I'm thankful for my socks. They keep my foot warm. And thankful for my shoes. And thankful for when I turn on the faucet. All the basic things. It's a long letter, and then small things. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful, and you know, and that's a good mentality. That be more and more appreciative. It takes a lot of things for granted. Where I come from in this my native country, we sometimes we don't have electric, for hours. Clean water was, we sometimes we have to dig down in the ground to get the water from the underground, and those they taste so sour, and you know, and here you get all these blessings, and we should be more and more appreciative of God's blessings. In verse 73, say yet they worship beside God what possesses no provisions, and people make their own idols with their own hand or something, and they worship them on earth, uh, and that they are getting stuff from them. I mean, idol worship. The title is idol worship, not very intelligent. And God says, nor on earth, nor can provide them with anything. What they're worshiping, they themselves are created from scratch. They cannot even help themselves, let alone what they're going to do for you. you know it's so, rhetorical type of situation that, why they can't even do, they cannot, they themselves, their life was predetermined how long they stayed in life. Every day they were, if you read in the Quran and other scriptures, they were repenting to God, that God, please forgive us. What they can do for you, they were the warners, they were the messengers of God. Their whole deal was to deliver you the message, and you are giving them a status next to God, or even beyond that. 74, God says, therefore do not cite examples for God. God knows while you do not know. And that's verse 74 actually is, I could not understand. I mean, this will be my question in the further, we can discuss after inshallah I'm done, that God, do not cite examples for God. I mean, and I try to look for the meaning, like, said, you don't try to make, God is telling us, do not make examples for God, and God this and God, like, what kind of example is God talking about? That, because God knows while you do not know. I mean, and this is my question to you guys, that, is it a negative way? Because we can make good examples for God. God is omnipotent, God is omniscient, God can do anything, these are good examples, but is it talking about the negative or positive? Then God says the rich believer is better than the poor believer. you know this verse is, like, rich believer, why, in which manners? And I have seen some submitters and even other people, they take this verse, the first part, literally. They said God is encouraging us to be a rich believer, but if you read this verse, God says, God says that the size example of a slave who is owned and is totally powerless compared to the one who be blessed with good provisions, from which he gives to charity secretly and publicly. Are they equal? Praise be to God, most of them do not know. So rich believer is in which way? Because if you're rich, then then you should be publicly and secretly sitting, giving out. In that sense, a rich believer. If you are rich and you're just keeping the money to yourself, then that richness is become a misery for you, because you did not make that money. God has given you that money, and then when God gives you, then there's requirement to that this much should go to zakat and charity and all that. And but if you're gonna make a lot of money and just keep it to yourself, then you take in the first part of this verse, that, oh, God says rich believers better, I'm a rich person. So that's why we need to understand that. And the next verse, God says, an example of two men. One is dumb, lack the ability to do anything, and whichever is he directed, I'm just kind of paraphrasing, and he cannot produce anything, is equal to the one who rules with justice and guided in the right path. So if you look at that verse, who rules with justice and is guided in the right path? Who is guided in the right path? Is right in right path by God, is by God. Who God guides? The one who's righteous. So these clearly, if you break down this verse, then you will see that God is talking about the idle believer and disbeliever. And disbeliever, rich disbeliever, is no good. A rich believer is best. And here, God is talking about the who is a believer in God. He will be ruled with justice and is guided on the right path. The other person, God, the one is dumb and lacks the ability to do anything, is because he dependent. He took devil his idol. Now he's like a Pied Piper. He's gonna take wherever he's gonna go. He's gonna follow him. He's gonna produce anything good. Absolutely, you cannot. If you are on a idol worship and you're going in the wrong path, you cannot produce anything, because all the provision is coming from God to you. You yourself are producing wrong stuff. So basically, you're not doing anything good. Your destination after this world will be miserable if you have idol worshiping. So these two verses, rich believer and this one, 75, 76, goes hands in hand. Then verse 77, to God belongs the future of heavens and earth, and the hour is a blink of an eye. Even God says blink of an eye, even closer. I mean, what is a blink of an eye? As I see my life pass, yesterday I was just cleaning up my garage, and I saw some old CDs when I was like in my 20s, and like looking at it, my God, these I used to like, all of a sudden you say how much time has passed, and all of a sudden you become 50, 60, 70-year-old. you look back and like, so my God, how time flies. And with God is even blink of an eye. So this world is very, very short to compare to the hereafter, and we should take take this life very seriously. In 78, God says that He brings out your mother's belly. You know nothing. Imagine you see a child that is born, and that brings out another point that like you go in the jungle life, the deers, all those, they're as soon they're born, they get up and start, because it's amazing how God created a system. A lion baby will need to be taken care for several months. If the deer and all those population would be the same as lions, imagine there would not be a single deer, because the deer cannot take care of its baby, and the deer population will be gone. All those the meat is gone. The carnivores will be gone. The lions will be gone. The whole jungle will be wiped off. How God created each system in a situation where they're born. I mean, look at the penguins. They can survive in the Arctic cold. Imagine we can even stand there, but they have a system. They can keep the food in their bellies for months. I mean, when we put it in food, we digest and it's gone. Imagine God created the system in their bellies that the food will stay for egg which is not even hatched yet. And when the baby comes out, and the father will feed the baby until certain time when the mother comes back. I mean, these are so beyond sufficient proofs that there is one God who's controlling all that. Evolution, how is going to do that? I mean, it will somebody say, oh, because penguins, they developed this function, and by the time you got to that point, they will be wiped off the planet Earth. There will not be a single penguin living. If you say deer baby will get up and start walking as they're born, if they evolve into it, if you're going to talk about that, they would have been wiped out a long time ago. Where's the learning process? Be He glorified. The most gracious, the most merciful. And the crucial, and sorry, God, 79. I'm just going to start wrapping up. And God talking about the birds, how they fly in the air. We learn from the birds how to fly. If you see the Wright brothers story, the first plane they made, was the wings were like totally not what we see today. And they failed so many times until they learned from the birds how the wing shape has to be specific, where the air passes on the up and down in a certain speed that gives the lift. Imagine that. We learned from, was evolution created that? I mean, flying is one of the complicated process. It's very, very calculated process. I mean, otherwise, even take a bee or a mosquito would be start flying and will be jumping, falling in here and here there. It's a very precise calculation to fly and you see the bee flies and makes sharp turns and go around and all that. You know, even in that, there's a sufficient proof. So I'm gonna talk about quickly talk about these verses. The first one was the hear. This is sufficient proof for who hear, and then there was a sufficient proof who understand. And I have some paraphrases, some of the verses. One of the verses is sufficient proof who reflect, and the last one was there's a sufficient proof who believe. So if you put them, they're in sequence. So the first one is here. Obviously, if you have information coming first, you'll be able to hear. Once you hear, the next one was understand. So we have a message coming in, you can hear, now you understand. This is a message. Now the next was what? Reflect. So now you have a message, you understand. Now you reflect on it. Reflecting means that, what is it? You ponder upon it. And then the last one, this is sufficient proof who believe. I mean, this is beautifully God has. See the verse number 79. This should be sufficient proof for the people who believe. And somewhere up there, I skipped the reflect one, but it's how how God is putting out one after another. And this is amazing. The beauty of this Quran, that how everything kind of sort of fits into each other. In verse 80, God's telling us that you make stationary homes, and when you travel from the the livestock that will be given you, you have so many benefits from the livestock. You use their fur, their hair, and nowadays, one of my person I know, who works in the livestock industry, and he was one of the inspectors. He said that they even take the blood from when they sacrifice the livestock, And the pharmaceutical companies use that blood to make medicines. We use heparin from the livers they produce. I mean, there's so many other benefit we using the livestock. In 81, God says that, the mountains and garments, in a similar way, God saying that all these blessings that you may submit. The verse 81 ends with that his blessing upon you that you may submit. I mean, this is like, you would be like, like begging people, like, my God, look at the blessing, and why would you not submit? What is taking you long that you're not submitting to God? 82 says, if they still turn away, then your sole mission is to clearly deliver the message. So don't feel bad. This is not your religion. This is God's religion. Don't take it personally. You just go out and give it. It's like you used to work for an insurance company, and only time you get a commission was you make a sale. You don't make a sale, you don't get a commission. But here, you just deliver. You show them the policy. This, don't find it, you get your commission. How amazing is that? You show it to them. Okay, you want to buy, you don't want to buy, that's it. It's up to you. And then God says, 83, the disbelievers, another definition of disbelievers, they're unappreciative. So God said they fully recognize God's blessing. When you tell them, all these blessing of God, they recognize it. Then deny them. The majority of them are disbelievers. They recognize it, and that's the whole irony of that. Like, you recognize it, and then still, and God says on the day of resurrection, the day will come when we raise from every community of witness. Then those who disbelieve will not be permitted to speak, nor will they be excused. Imagine you'll not be allowed in that court system. There's no more lawyers or anything. That's it. Your judgment has been issued. There's no arguing or anything like that. And each witness will I think, will be the messenger, whoever, they brought the message or something like that. And the last verse, 85, uh, once those who transgress see the retribution, it will be too late. It will not be commuted for them, nor will they be despited. That's it. Once you're predetermined, actually, once our predetermined life ends in this world, it doesn't matter if the day of judgment is billions of years down the road. Your time is up. When the angel shows up on your doorstep to take you, that's it. There's no more repentance. As Pharaoh was at the last moment, he's submitting. He said it's too late. So after that, even though the day of resurrection is far down, there is nothing more can be done. That's it. So we have to take the time wisely and to follow the word of God and be appreciative and try to be righteous. And I think that's my time. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, Adam, you did a great job.
Masha Allah. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Masha Allah.
Thanks, Adam.
Masha Allah. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. That was good, actually. Sorry, I missed most of it, but I think I'll watch it, listen to it again on YouTube when it's posted. That was really sounded very, very good. Thank you.
Praise God.
So I wanted to comment on the verses about rich believer and the poor believer. I think it's often, like you said, it's often confused by people. Sometimes people say that you because the rich people will, more rich. There will be more rich people in hell than poor people, and so so if you're rich and you're a Semitic, that means that you are more righteous because you have you you are not going to be like transgressing and stuff like that, because God says when somebody is becomes rich, he transgresses. So you can basically how to spend it or something like that. But I think what we learn from the Quran is that as far as the belief is concerned, there's no difference between a rich person and a poor person. So doesn't mean one is more righteous than the other because he is more rich. And I think that's a misunderstanding that some people have. But I think really when it comes down to it, it's better to be rich than to be poor is the idea, which in itself is correct, but you have to understand what that means is that if you are rich and you have resources, you can spend in the cause of God, like you in the message of the covenant really talked about it at length. And like, one of the things that I remember him saying was that, you can print more Qurans, right? And that's interesting because, nowadays, if you want to print Qurans, I mean, this is impossible. But at his time, he obviously was all for spreading God's message and people striving in the cause of God and promoting the message by printing more Qurans so you can distribute more Qurans to people and promote the message that way. And, you could build a mosque and things like that. And so those are the things that will greatly help in spreading the message. So, you're encouraged when you go to work, when you do whatever, you put it in the right perspective, So when you go to do your job every day, you tell yourself that, you're doing this so you can make money or earn God's provision so you can spend it in the cause of God, and earn credit that way. So like everything you do in general, is sort of should be in that way, like you put it in the right perspective, like if you, let's say if you want to spend time with your family, so then you say, okay, I want to spend time with my family because that would be, for the cause of God, like, God says that you have to be equitable with your family and all that. So everything has to be in the right perspective. But in this case specifically, this verse is really emphasizing on the importance of being charitable and spending in the cause of God, really. And so when you are blessed with resources, then that's what something you will do. So in that case, this example makes perfect sense. But that doesn't mean that if you have more wealth, somehow there's more righteousness in you, that God has given you more wealth. And that, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because provisions is controlled by God. We don't. Somebody cannot,
Hmm.
you know. And if somebody is not, God did not give him enough money. God is fair and justice. It doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you are right in that sense that a rich person will get more rewards and this and that. A poor person will get their fair and share. They will have enough opportunity to do in their own environment in that
Hmm.
sense.
I also have a comment on this one.
Hmm.
Can I say?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if nobody's talking, you guys don't need to ask permission.
Okay. So I also think that, you know, God discouraged, there is no hermetism in Islam, right? In submission. And there is a myth that, or in some of the countries where like people would walk away to, caves and away from civilization or leave their families. I'm pursuing just God, and I'm gonna meditate day and night, and then get away from worldly life and everything, forsake it for God. And most of the mullahs I've seen, they would live on charities. Um, so obviously they cannot. Maybe they can physically. They think they're, striving in the cause of God, but they don't have to work and anything. So God does not discourage people to go and pursue the worldly things, right? Like the income and all that. And so, and if God gives you enough, God, in the cause of God, you can spend extra money, and obviously you will get more credits. So there is no pride in on purposely becoming a poor person and say I don't care about the worldly thing, I rather stay poor, you know, that is some kind of a philosophy in some of the parts of the world. So God says there is no harm for if you are rich, and then you can be a better believer as well, you know. You, but if you're rich and you don't want to be a better believer, that's up to you too. So it's not that the only the rich believer is a better believer, meaning to the choice is still yours if you want to become. Okay, that's about it.
One of the verses God says, "The charity shall go to the one who collects them." So if somebody, I guess, maybe devoted to collect charity, and maybe you guys can clear me on that, is maybe allowed to keep portion of it because this person is working to collect the charity. And Surah Juma, God says, when you're done with, I'm paraphrasing the contact prayer, go and seek God's bounty and continue to remember God. So God is encouraging us. God doesn't want us to just sit at home. God, even though God says the provision is set, somebody can say, okay, if God is going to give me $1 million, I don't have to go outside. It's going to come on my door. That's the wrong approach. God is encouraging us, do your best and leave it rest to me. I think that's what it means. So my question was during the study was that they ascribe to God something. No, no,
What they just like for
no,
themselves.
no, sorry, not that one. This they let me try to find that verse. Sorry. This sets example. I mean, same thing, but God. Okay. Therefore, do not cite the example for God. God knows well. You do not know. I could not understand this verse. And is it bad way or good way or what is it?
Uh,
Any idea?
do not cite the examples for God, yet they worship beside God what possesses. You're talking about verse 74?
Yes, verse 74.
What? Surah, please.
16?
Is anyone talking?
You're talking.
No, no. I just wanted to make sure that I can hear you guys. I there was a silence for a long time.
There's just one person talking and a couple of people laughing. I don't know. Maybe verse 74 is connected to the next two verses that follow it. But I don't really have a great explanation for 74.
I think one of the explanations could also be, like, yet they worship beside God will possess no provisions for them in the heavens and the earth, nor can provide them with anything. So, when people, justify their idolatry, we know that they provide these worldly examples to justify it. Like when it says like no partners with God, right? So, but when you look at the idol worshippers, the way they justify their idolatry, like worship when it comes to idolizing Muhammad and other idols, like they use these worldly analogies, like you have a boss, and let's say you're the head of the company and you're just a worker, and how are you if you need something? Are you going to go straight to the boss, or is the boss going to have managers and stuff like that? And then shouldn't you go to the manager? And these all these worldly examples, but with God, obviously God is far above anything like that. So there's no similitude for anyone to really describe something like God Himself. But this example that God provides about the rich believer and the poor believer, no, not sorry, not the rich believer and the poor believer. Some other allegories, like the ones like where if someone has something, like you're the boss, and would you give something to your subordinates? So people would be citing other kinds of examples for gods, and so it says, it's telling, I believe it's kind of maybe telling them that these people should not cite their own examples for God, because when they cite examples for God, obviously they speak based on the worldly knowledge that they have, and they don't know. Well, God is the one who knows, so they use these worldly examples to mislead people when they cite these examples for God. But if you really look at it, the example that God has provided, I think it's very different than the kinds of examples that people use to justify idolatry. That's kind of like how I see it so far.
Actually, that's how I see it too. Because if you look at the word cite and you look at the meaning under verb, it's quote, and it's used as evidence as evidence for or justification of an argument or statement. So if they're citing an example for God and they're using it to justify their own means, it's like that's what God's telling us not to do.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna ask, is anyone there?
That does make sense. And one of the things that I heard all the time is that they use that God is merciful. God is so merciful. This word has been abused so much that I went, oh, well, God is going to have mercy on us on the day of resurrection. So yeah, of course, God is the most merciful. At the same time, if you read the whole Quran, you get the understanding of what does that mean to be, and who God is merciful upon. It's already a mercy that we are here in this world. We would have been in hell already.
Yeah, that's an important point. That God's most merciful, good example is that we're here. The angels would have sent us to hell.
Yeah, and then the beginning of this Quran study was the retribution will come. God is wipe out all the creatures if God start punishing for people's transgression. Yeah. God is not doing it. God is allowing the idol worship to go on in this planet Earth, for a purpose.
And He's giving us every opportunity to reform too, right? Even though we all
absolutely.
commit sins and we all,
forgiveness upon, and He forgives us, day and night. A lot of sins that we don't even recognize, God forgives us. It's one of the worst is something like that we don't even but God is forgiving us.
I also wanted to comment on verse 72, because I was sharing this verse yesterday in a discussion. And this verse says, God made for you spouses from among yourselves and produced for you from your spouses children and grandchildren and provided you with good provisions. Should they believe in falsehood and turn appreciative of God's blessings? So I think one of the things that I see from this verse is, God, providing us with spouses and children and grandchildren is actually a blessing from God. And I mean, for most people, it's a very straightforward concept to understand, right? But for some people, they might look at spouses and children as a burden. Like some person was asking the other day if it's okay for her to ask for children at an older age, like it was based on Quran. And then one of the responses that she received was like, why ask God for a burden, like things like that. And so
Wow.
yeah, so but I mean these verses show us that, because for believers, if you are a believer, you could have money, children, and whatever, and those will become a source of retribution for you. But if you are believing in God and you're a monotheist submitter, devoted absolutely to God alone, then all of these things will, your spouses and your children, as God said in the Quran, they will become a source of joy for you. And it will be a blessing for you for sure, that you have this in your life, seeing your own children, your grandchildren, and your spouses, obviously, would be a blessing.
Mashallah. I know a lot of people who sees children as a burden, actually.
Mhm.
I know a guy, he says to me, he came from 12 siblings. And he says, "Oh, I don't know what my dad and mom was thinking. What a burden." And I think if you ask the mom and dad what they were thinking, they would say it's such a joy. So everybody has such a different perspective of children.
Well, it's interesting because in modern life, people have fewer kids, and I think one reason is because they want a particular lifestyle. But then, as submitters, we realize that God controls everything, including uh, the provisions and the money we get. So, if you want to have a lot of kids and you're a righteous person, then God will provide for you. And there's a lot of examples of that where people go out of their ways to help other people, even though that person may have limited resources. Somehow they can do it. Actually, I was discussing this with my mother the other day. When we were young, we were poor, and my mother was a solo mother. Right, our father had left us, and she was always inviting people over to our house, and sometimes we'd have 60 visitors at our house, and somehow she would be able to cook and provide food for everybody, and lots of food too, not just a little bit of food. And when you think about it, it doesn't make sense because we never had much money. So how does that work? And that only works because God must have provided for us.
Mashallah. Well, that's true. I mean, every time God sends a soul, God provides a certain share for that person that they're gonna have from the time they're born till the time they die, and we can't do anything to increase it or decrease it, right? And so they come with their own share of provisions.
Okay.
So the next 3 months in Quran study, I should hear that the submitting men in this Quran study is expecting children.
We'll have to get married first. They can't have
we're,
children. They'll be
we're trying to
they'll be
do it with the right
unrighteous.
steps, Pamela.
Baby
Where you
steps.
must Australia.
We have to take baby steps, not take it literally.
At least we've got Adam providing a good example for us.
Speaking of Adam, I was smiling when Adam said we're all part of Adam's family.
Who said that?
You can't call me dad. It's
Adam
fine.
said, you know.
You know the verse 985. God says, "Do not be impressed by their money or their children. God causes these to be source of misery for them in this world, and their soul depart as disbelievers." I mean, that's a very harsh wordings for somebody who's a disbeliever. So the money and children will become their misery, and we can clearly see. I mean, I've seen in my life that some people with a lot of wealth, but they were so depressed, in misery and complaints and sadness. And if the money is supposed to bring you happiness, and if it's not bringing you happiness, there's something reason. And the same person becomes a believer and become a righteous. The same thing as Solomon was earlier quoting the verse, that becomes source of joy and happiness. Same things. So all we need to do is just become righteous and believe in God and trust in God.
Yes, and Russia gave examples of like celebrities that obviously are rich and yet they were not happy. Like Eddie Murphy was one example, and I think there was another lady that was one of the richest people in the world. And I actually heard a quote from one guy. I think he created a movie studio with Steven Spielberg and another person, and he said if anybody thinks that money will fix your problems, then they've obviously never been rich, which I thought was an amazing quote from somebody that's obviously blessed with a lot of money.
That's true. A lot of people, they win the lottery. You see their life. You know, one of the person who won the lottery say, "I wish I never won the lottery." That only brought misery in my life. That was her quote.
It's amazing, right? You can't imagine that, right?
And you see when they're like the lottery is like in a $200 million, and you see the people are lining up in the grocery stores and long line outside, but they're lining up for the misery in reality.
And that's why I wonder sometimes about, you're talking about the rich and the poor before in the verse. Sometimes I wonder if we really know what it means to find happiness and peace in this world. Maybe what we think is happiness and peace is different from what it actually is, if we ever find it. So maybe you could, for example, be, a person with limited resources, but you're very righteous, and God has blessed you with peace and happiness, and you're content with that, maybe.
Yeah, the happiness only and only and only comes from God. You cannot expect something else to make you happy. A mansion on the beach, or expensive cars, and you think that's going to make you happy. No, this will become a joy for you if you are a believer. If you're not a believer, if you're idol worshiper, then you think God says in the verse that we just read that the become source of misery and and retribution in the hereafter. So if you are not believer, if you're idol worshiper, the happiness is you're not going to get happiness anyway, because happiness only comes from God. God can make you happy with even just nothing with you. You could be like homeless, but if God wants to make you happy, you'll be just sitting on the footpath and be the happiest person. God can do anything. And we had the reason I picked the topic for the livestock. My last sermon was because, so me and my wife we thought that we should have chickens in our backyard. So we got some little chickens about 3-4 months ago, and not realize that we cannot have chickens in our property because our property does not go with the code of the city. Um, uh, so we checked the website and we thought everything was fine, so we had them. And when we had them, they were so small, they were just running around. All they need is water and food. That's it. And I observed them. They were just so happy. They were like running on, all playing with this thing, that thing, and they're just so happy. And I would look at them and I say, wow, I have so much, and yet I'm not running around happy like them. And they have only two things in their life, and they're so happy. No problem at all. So, Masha Allah, God runs everything. We had the chickens, and the couple times the inspectors came around, and finally they told us you can have them, so we got them. But all that process, God taught us a lot of valuable lessons. And that chicken story that I mentioned in the Quran study, that the eggs would be so expensive if they were behaving like regular birds. But God created for us that as soon they hatch, they're grown so fast to provide us with eggs for the first 2-3 years, or maybe 4 years, and after that they stop laying eggs, so you can use them as meat. And these are clear signs that this system is designed perfectly, for us. Amazing.
Masha Allah. Yes, it is amazing.
The more you ponder on God's creations and systems, the more He'll just open your eyes.
Sorry, I laughed before because we had chickens when we were young, actually, at our house.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
we too, back home, we had chickens. Yeah, that's why I decided to have them.
That's a good idea. Even my mother she was living in Melbourne in Australia, and she had chickens at her place. So I guess different cities have different Bibles.
Right.
So I don't mind trying to be happy like a chicken. I just don't want to end up in a bucket like a chicken. At KFC.
Maybe you have to stay small and agile.
We were on Surah B, and subhanallah, God has titled a whole chapter by the name of B. It is a miracle, like a living miracle of, all species. Everything you look at it, like all of God's creations, whether it is a flower or an animal or a bird, everything has its own unique qualities, colors and whatnot, its own DNA, its own guidance. But bee is so special from their whole, their how they live in the colony and how the hierarchy system works for them and the way they build their homes. The whole bee thing, and how geometrically it's perfect to maximize the units where they can store the honey and the cross-pollination and all that, and healing coming out of the honey. And I know Solomon saw that post too. I posted something about the bee that when they sting somebody, they eventually die after that process. God does not want them to take any kind of virus or disease out of that person's blood and then transfer it to their bee, honey or their bee nest or whatever. So eventually they die. They don't survive after stinging a human being. This is it's just, if these are not, like, we look at one species and its guidance, and one has to become a believer. Like God says, um, for believers, there are signs in the horizon, and on the, it's everywhere. The signs, the proofs. once you become a believer, you see miracles in everything. You will see, oh my God, who could guide such a tiny little creature to do this perfect work? I mean, this is just mind blowing. If this is not a miracle, then what is? These are living, everyday miracles. Yeah. And we still have messengers coming up with the code 19. Well, by the way, there is a new announcement from somebody who just declared another. Anyway, I am not going to go on that topic. Just.
I have some information for Solomon about some disturbing happenings today.
Okay, I'm done. Shouldn't go there.
I actually, if nobody have any question, I have one question, but it's not based on the verses that we discussed. It's another verse.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Oh, can I go? Okay. It's Surah 52, verse 20. I seek refuge in God from Satan to rejected. Preoccupation with this life condemned. It says, know that this worldly life is no more than play and games, and boasting among you, and hoarding of money and children. It is like abundant rain that produces plants and pleases the disbelievers. But then the plants turn into useless hay and are blown away by the wind. In the hereafter, there is either severe by the wind. In the hereafter, there is either severe retribution or forgiveness from God and approval. This worldly life is no more than a temporary illusion. So the part I have a question with is, I don't know if I'm reading it correctly, but can you hoard children? Because I know you can hoard money. But it says, and hoarding of money and children. How to read that? How exactly
Yeah,
should I be reading
if you
it?
look at Arabs, they're hoarding children.
What surah? Sorry.
Mhm.
What surah?
57:20. 57:20.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think also when you look at the hoarding, hoarding of, like, if you look at children, uh, people wanting to have children just for the sake of the idea that they're gonna give them security when they grow older. It's like a form of sustenance for them, like financially. Like when you grow older, obviously, who's gonna go and make money for you, who's gonna be your children, right? That's kind of the mentality that some people may have. And so that's why, like, these people, they get very sad when they find out that they have a daughter, because the daughter's gonna go away and they're not gonna get many money out of it. And then they become happier if they have boys, because they think boys will go and make a living and earn money, them being the bread earners, and provide for them and stuff. I think that could be one way of looking at it as well.
So I look up the word hoard, and it's noun, a stock or store of money or valued object,
Mhm.
typically one that is secret or carefully guarded.
Mhm.
Verb, amass money or valued object, and hide or store away.
Yeah, I think also, like, you can also look at it in that way as well. Like, they're kind of safeguarding it, like trying to, you know, uh, I don't know, keep everything that they have to themselves, even with their children. But I think the way I look at it more is like they look at it like as a means of maybe power and money, that if they have these more children, they're gonna have more power and more money. So not only do they just hoard money, they also hoard children. So like if, like, say someone just has maybe girls, they will want to have boys as well. So they can have a future, like an heir or someone that will be able to carry it forward, and even take care of them and their properties and stuff like that.
So I guess that would fall under valued objects. Value. Probably not objects, but valued.
Mhm.
It could be sort of like, you could have a big family and a lot of children and grandchildren, and depending on how you see God, that could be a way of boasting about
Mhm.
what you've achieved in this life. But if you're righteous, then you'll realize it's a gift from God, and you'll be appreciative to God. But if you're not, if you don't believe in God, it's probably more a thing to boast about. Look at all my children and my grandchildren,
Yeah.
and like what Solomon said about the power.
I mean, I have seen a few family that they have a lot of boys, and you can clearly see their and their faces, the parents, and that sort of like proudness that they have. There's one family have 5 boys and 6 boys, and then they feel like proud that, oh, that's like some award for them. At the same time, some families they have like a lot of girls and they don't have any boy, and you will see like humbleness in them, like like source of like they're like feeling sad, you know like in a complaining mode. So both are situations are wrong, because the blessing comes from God, and if God has given you, blessed you with whichever it is, you should be happy and be grateful to God. And if you think, I mean, we have some verses in the Quran which when they have a daughter, their faces become like sad. I mean, this should not happen to you, because this is a blessing of God. God will make it best out of you. If you even have 10 girls, if you believe and trust in God, God will make all of them perfect for you. And if you have 10 boys and you feel proud, they will become source of misery and unhappiness. One of the true story of one of the submitter family, long time ago, when they become submitter, they left their community, and people in their community were telling them, specifically a couple of families, that how are you going to have your children to be get married, because you are submitter and you're going to marry with the submitter, what's going to happen? And their son and daughter got married easily with the submitter, and those who were saying to them they're still not married, the kids are older, because they say things like that to them. I mean, God controls everything. you know if you fear become a submitter or this and that, what's going to happen? God will take care of you, no matter what.
I also see hoarding of. Look at the Arab. They have like these rulers, these kings in the or royal family in Saudi Arabia. They have hundreds of children. They don't even remember their names. They might even not recognize them if they come in front of them. So I guess in older time it was really a matter of pride that you know nobody can mess with you. You have a lot of boys. You're strong. They can earn more money and fight in the war, blah blah. But these things become matter of pride, and it can really inflate your ego. So it's not good for people who who for purposely hoard money and have children to feel prominent and strong and proud, and that will eventually take them away from submission. So I mean, yeah, hoarding money and children for the sake of vanity, because it all depends on your innermost thoughts, like, yeah.
Okay, do you guys want to continue the stream, or if you guys if we don't have any specific questions, maybe?
Yeah, we can go off stream.
Okay, and
This, I have a specific question actually.
mhm,
I needed your input, everybody's input. So here in Canada, um, we have like the your medical is covered, right? And so when a woman is over 50, they push for a mammogram every 2 years. They really want you to go book yourself and get a mammogram. So is it okay to get it, or should we not get it, or is there a harm? Pamela, you especially might know the answer.
Yeah, I would stay away from all mammograms because I think in mammogram, I did the research
Uh,
and maybe I can forward it to you, but I would stay away from all mammograms.
really?
I Yes, I don't. Do they do biopsy? Because I've did the research and
No,
I forget a lot of
just a
stuff.
mammogram, like
Just yeah,
pictures and stuff.
yeah. I remember doing the research like about 10 years ago when my family were faced with cancer, some younger members of the family. I remember doing the research on that, and I remember remembering this research said I need to stay away from those things. Just eat healthy. The thing is, just eat healthy, just eat anti-cancerous food, any food that would be anti-cancerous. And then you don't have to worry about all
mhm,
those things. Like me, I don't even take a physical.
the
I,
I
I don't go to these doctors. I don't go to doctors.
I think like it would be okay if you had any symptoms or some disease and you wanted to
No,
get
no.
checkup. But if you
E-
don't have any problems and they're not forcing it on you, then it's your choice. But I mean, it's not
No,
wrong
all I'm
to.
saying is that does it come under some kind of, because they're all about prevention, right? They say if the
Right.
early detection. So because government faces the burden, it's not like US.
Mm-hmm.
You in
Mm-hmm.
US you have, whether you will have to spend money to go get
Mm-hmm.
a mammogram, just even though
Mm-hmm.
you have zero signs. I've already had two
Mm-hmm.
or three in my lifetime. And then
Mm-hmm.
every 2 years, the doctor keeps the record and says, "Oh, time for mammogram now again." You know,
Mm-hmm.
so they, because if somebody, God forbid, goes through cancer, then the Ministry of Health has a bigger burden, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So they
So
try to save
they,
money.
yeah, they try to save money, and obviously it's agony and burden on the health system. So they want you to have mammogram and your colon testing, like a stool test, every 2 years, so they can prevent whatever they can,
Right. I mean,
because
religiously speaking, from the Quran, there's nothing saying that you can't, right? But the thing is, like, how, like, when you go, I mean, are you fearful? You're thinking
no,
that, you're not, you're trusting in God and everything, then I don't see like if it's breaking any commandment. But I mean, as long as, you're not afraid and you trust in God and,
right, and it's
you're
not like
just,
you're paying any
yeah,
money.
yeah. It's like, somebody might go to a dentist visit like every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that, but let's say, most people in America, like they're encouraged to
Mm-hmm.
go every 6 months to just get the checkup and stuff. And I mean, religiously speaking, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But I mean, is it necessary and all those things? I mean, that's like it's you know, very specific to your own needs and stuff like that. But from the Quran, I mean, I don't see where you could be breaking any commandment by doing that, you know. So like, I would think that it would kind of would be a responsibility to like discourage someone from doing something which is not like specifically, you know, discouraged in the Quran in that sense, you know. But
Okay.
it definitely, I mean, I would definitely not see anything wrong if you were not feeling well and you wanted to go to a doctor. But if you're already okay and you still want to go to a doctor, I mean, just as an extra precautionary step, I mean, that's still like okay. I don't see anything wrong with that, you know. Like you know, it's like when God says He created shields for us in war
Mm-hmm.
and to protect ourselves, and then it's like, okay, well, I mean, it's fine to be protective, but you know, insurance is like the way we have it in America is wrong, but that's wrong due to other reasons, you know, like there's gambling involved, people betting against themselves, thinking something bad is gonna happen to them, and then this will save them, you know. But this is not the same thing. But you're just saying, well, I just want to go check to see if there's anything wrong. It can be detected early, and that's the extent of it. I mean, that's to me doesn't. But I mean, I want to hear other people's thoughts, but I don't see anything wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I go a different route. Um, I don't think the government is here to protect anybody, so are trying to save money. Um, I always go the route of prevention, and so possibly use anything that's anti-cancerous, eat as much anti-cancerous food as possible. But no, I would never go for a mammogram. But that's me. I'm different in a way whereby I don't deal with anything to do with medical doctors or pharmaceutical industry.
Right, and you don't have any like religious reasoning for it, right? It's just like a personal.
No, 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 nothing to
Yeah,
do with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
religion. This is just me. Yeah,
Right,
that's
right.
just me.
That's good. Okay, so I guess if should should I stop the stream now? At this point,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, especially okay. Um, all right, so thank you everyone for joining us for the study. Those who joined us on YouTube, our next study, God willing, will be on Saturday, and our teacher is going to be Nutat. I think you do it Saturday?
Inshallah, I can do it.
Okay, mashallah. So, also, I think we normally have it at 9, but last time all of us were talking, we kind of started late, and some of us were wondering if we could maybe push the timing just a little bit, but you weren't there, Nuzat, so we didn't really make a decision about that because I know you know, it could be a challenge sometimes. But we could probably talk about that later. But I mean, I think that's okay. We can just decide it afterwards. So God bless you guys. Assalamu alaikum. Okay.